Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New York Giants Roundtable Podcast. I am Matthew Schmidt. He is Dylan Feltovich. And Dylan, the Giants have now lost 3 games in a row, coming off that brutal Week 9 loss to the 49ers. And they didn't even show much life in the game, the Giants. But Jackson Dart did look actually okay considering the circumstances. Not having Cam Scatterbo, not having Malik Neighbors, right? Missing so many pieces on both sides of the ball. But for as good as he looked, I'm beginning to really worry about injury concerns with Dart moving forward because of the fact that, Dylan, the guy doesn't slide. The guy is taking out multiple defenders, sometimes just for 1 yard, not even for a first down. And how much of a concern do you think this is going forward for Jackson Dart?
I definitely think it's a huge concern considering that, Dart is definitely one of those mobile guys that drew a lot of comparisons to a Josh Allen when he was coming out of the draft. And obviously, you see Josh Allen being able to complete those plays all the time and stuff, but he's much more slender. He doesn't have the necessary frame to be able to do that on a consistent basis. So I definitely think that that's going to be something huge that, he needs to be able to work on moving forward.
For sure. I was just going to say, Dart, Allen was probably 6'5", 240. Dart is not that big. Dart's 6'2", maybe 220, right? They're decent size. He's not like he's Bryce Young, but he's not big either. So I think somebody needs to have a talk with him about just getting down when you're running with the football because it's getting to a point where I understand trying to get the first down. Like I will always understand that from a quarterback's perspective. But when you already got the first down and you're in the open field, just go down. Like don't take on those extra tacklers because you're going to end up shortening your career. And I think with Jackson Dart, he really is the Giants, really the ray of hope, their only hope right now going forward. We just saw how, we'll get this in a little bit, how bad the defense was yesterday. I think Dart right now, especially with Scatterbo's sideline and Neighbors out as well, he needs to take such care of himself going with the football, not just in terms of in the pocket, but I think more so on the run. And sometimes just throw the ball away too. Like you get those points where just get rid of the football.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, you saw a guy like Jaden Daniels. That was one of his biggest knocks coming out of college. And I at least he's sort of learned how to control it a little bit. It's not as bad, but I mean, it is definitely something of a concern. And like you said, it's not the same frame and as a Josh Allen. And it's just, I think over time, it'll be something that could eventually get fixed.
Yeah, I think he'll learn as he goes forward. He's still very young. He's a rookie, right? A lot of quarterbacks have this issue coming up. But you look at someone like a Lamar Jackson who's gotten quite a bit banged up throughout his career so far. And he hasn't really had an injury yet. It's been so severe where he hasn't missed extensive time because of it, or had any kind of major issues that way. But I do wonder about Lamar Jackson's career now. Has his career already been shortened because of the hits he's taken? And in the case of Jackson Dart, as athletic as he is, he's not so athletic like Lamar Jackson where he should be taking those risks all the time. So I think with the Giants now, the only thing is, and this is something will come a little later as well, I'm just not sure how invested Brian Daboll is going to be the Jackson Dart at this point, just because they're 2-7. Daboll's probably going to get fired at the end of the year. So it might take just people around, maybe some of the veterans around him talking to him, being like, look, Jackson, you got to go down here. Maybe some of his linemen or Andrew Thomas or even a Scatterbo pulls him aside and talks to him and says, listen, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and that's where I think the leadership within the building as well, with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston there, obviously in the quarterback room, especially a guy like Russell Wilson, who has been known for being kind of that mobile guy. He should know, best case there. So I think that eventually it'll start to come around for him. And I hate to admit it, but sometimes it just takes that one hit that makes you realize okay, like this, I need to start getting down there. But obviously we're not hoping for that. I hope that someone just tells him and he starts doing it at that point.
Yeah, I would hope so. I would really hope so too. But I was actually kind of impressed with the way Dart played yesterday. I mean, he didn't have a bad game. Didn't turn the ball over, a couple touchdowns, looked good running the football. I mean, he was really the Giants' only source of consistent offense yesterday. But, I think the rest of the way here, it's going to be very interesting to monitor him to see how he performs and whether or not the Giants kind of at least his teammates kind of keep him in check a little bit, saying, "Look, we're 2-7. We're not going to the playoffs. Save yourself for next year." And as in terms of also Jackson Dart being the one ray of hope yesterday, right? I think we need to really talk about how bad the defense has been this season, because yesterday they gave up 34 points to a 49ers team that had Mac Jones under center. And no disrespect to Mac Jones, he's been better this year, but he's still Mac Jones. Okay. And Brian Robinson looked like a stud yesterday. For 5 carries for 53. What was it? 10.6 yards per carry or something like that. Something crazy, and a touchdown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dylan, this defense. Now, granted, the Giants were missing Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo, Cordell Flott. They were missing some very key players in the secondary. But this has been an issue for them all season. Their defense is toward the bottom of the league here. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. This doesn't make any sense to me, because when you came into this matchup, you thought, all right, Mac Jones coming in might be a little bit easier throughout the air, especially with all the injuries that have been going on with the secondary unit right now. Mm-hmm. But the sad part was too, his completion percentage was off the charts too. Yeah. He was dialed in, and it's very frustrating too then when you flip it to the ground game, because we've preached it so many times with the trenches. They have the capabilities of being a dominant team within the trenches, and yet they give up, 10.6 yards per carry to Brian Robinson Jr., which, no disrespect, he's a good running back, but
he's not elite.
Yeah. It's rough.
And I hate to bring it up again, Dylan, just because we talked about it before, but we need to talk a little bit about Abdul Carter here, because now we're going to week 10. He still has a half a sack. I get the idea of putting pressure on the quarterback. It matters, right? The advanced analytics, all that stuff. But at some point, Brian Burns has 11 sacks this year. Brian Burns is doing everything for this team defensively right now. We saw also yesterday he forced that fumble that looked like a pick. I know Carter recovered it. He was there for that. But he's doing everything right now. And Abdul Carter, he's not making the kind of impact that I hoped he would coming out of Penn State, even in his rookie year. Maybe there's a pass here, but do you think that I'm a little valid my concerns, at least being a little frustrated about Carter at this point?
I think to some degree, yes. But I also think that the position he's in right now is just really kind of limiting him. And it's not even just the fact of Brian Burns being there, but also KT still as a pass rusher there too. KT's a good edge rusher. He is
very good.
Yes, yeah. He is clearly someone that could be an established pass rusher for a team. But that's going to definitely limit your responsibilities if you're a guy like Abdul Carter. So, and that's going to probably tie more into something like when we talk about the trade deadline and stuff. It's it's very important for the Giants to be able to make some room for that, because then Carter can start to see more opportunities, and then he can be in a better situation moving into 2026.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm just at a point now where I'm just so frustrated with this team, Dylan. It's I thought going into the year, now I didn't think the Giants would make the playoffs, especially looking at their schedule. I thought there may be a 4 or 5 win team looking at their schedule, which that's probably what they will be, if that. But I at least thought the defense, with all the additions they made during the offseason, I thought they get a lot better. And I guess some of this falls on Shane Bowen too. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, he's not putting his guys in the best position to succeed. You look at this roster, and you look at guys like Burns and Carter and Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, right? The Giants are stacked with talent, but they're just not delivering. And that's something that probably has to fall on the coaching staff.
Yeah, and if Dable ends up staying as the head coach for next year in that hypothetical world, Shane Bowen's got to be the first one gone at that point. There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah. And he has to go.
He has to. And Joe Schoen has done an incredible job of building up that defense. I give him so much credit for that, and yet the product is not as advertised.
Yeah, the funny thing about Joe Schoen is obviously he's now in his 4th year as GM of the Giants, and it hasn't gone well, right? Overall, it hasn't gone well. They're, since making the playoffs back in 2022, they've won 11 games since then. So it hasn't gone well. But at the same time, I look at what he's done, the pieces he's assembled defensively. He actually put some decent pieces on that defense. Again, we mentioned the defensive front, but even like you look at the secondary, they went out and got Holland and Adebo in the offseason, right? Cordell Flott also was not a bad draft. He's actually turned to a pretty good player back there. So I'm not. I maybe also we're kind of overrating the talent here. Maybe a guy like a Thibodeau is not as good as I thought he was, or we thought he was. Maybe Dexter Lawrence for some reason has lost a step this year. I don't know. Maybe he's battling some kind of injury that we're not knowing of. But I just can't help but look at this defense. I think they should be a lot better than they are, and I'm sure you agree on that notion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a case where I still think that the talent is there. I mean, it's got to be at this point when you got a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau as your 3 potentially. Like, I still think that's very good. And I don't know. I just feel like that just needs to be an off-season issue that needs to be addressed in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe in the offseason we'll get more of a clear picture of what's going to actually be going on here with the Giants. We'll see. But going back to the offense for a second here, life after Cam Scatterwood was the first game with Scatterwood out, out for the season now following that gruesome ankle injury he had in Philadelphia the week prior. And, something was a little odd here, Dylan, with the Giants rushing attack. Me and you just discussed this a little bit previously. I thought for sure that once, and even last week, you and I kind of talked about this. Remember when I mentioned like Jerome Ford as a potential target at the trade deadline with the Giants? You were like, you know what? They already got Tyrone Tracy. He's actually very similar to Jerome Ford. But you look yesterday, and Tyrone Tracy had 5 carries, and he had 3 catches, right? But 5 carries. Devin Singletary had 8 carries. And Singletary actually looked okay, mainly in the first half. But is this going to be a thing now where Tyrone Tracy is becoming just an afterthought in the Giants' backfield? That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I definitely think that's where you're starting to head into that area, because when you looked at last season, it was pretty clear that Tracy was the lead back over Singletary. And in this case, I mean, you would have kind of assumed that Tracy would just pick up where he left off from last season. But I mean, Singletary now getting the majority of the carries, and also too, I mean, he was averaging 5.4 yards per carry. Like, he was decent. Like, I still think you're limiting your potential there with Tracy as just a third round down back. I mean, but at the same time too, like, I know we're probably going to talk about the trade conspiracies again, but like a Jerome Ford then at that point does make sense, especially with how bad these weapons are right now for Jackson Dart.
Yeah, that's what I think. If you're not going to use Tyrone Tracy, then go out and get another running back if that's the case. Because remember, the funny thing about it was last year when the Giants signed Singletary in free agency back in 2024, in March 2024, it looked like he would be the lead back going into the season. But then Tyrone Tracy ended up usurping him, becoming the top guy. And I was actually very impressed with Tracy. And even when they drafted Scatterbo, at the time, like, the Giants don't even really need a halfback. You got Tyrone Tracy with Scatterbo. I'll take it because how great he was at Arizona State. But then it comes to the season, and Tyrone Tracy got to a slow start. Scatterbo immediately established himself as the top guy. And I'm wondering going forward now, like maybe even during the offseason, the Giants will use Tracy as trade bait. I don't know. I mean, Singletary's contract is expiring, so maybe they'll keep Tracy regardless. But to me, it was interesting to see the dynamic there with Scatterbo being sidelined. And, of course, Jackson Dart figures into the rushing attack as well, just because he's so, good with his legs. But I'm curious going forward this season. Do you think this is something that we'll see the rest of the season, of Singletary being like the quote-unquote lead back here? Do you think that the Giants are going to be doing this the rest of the way?
I think it's a little bit too early to tell right now. I would give it probably a week or two, especially when you're going up against the Chicago Bears after kind of that disaster that happened with them last week. But I think that, I mean, it has all the ingredients for it to actually come true at this point, because, again, Tracy, for some reason, hasn't looked the same as he did last year. And at this point, you just got to play your best players at that point and make sure that you have all the help that you can give to Dart. So if that's the case for these next couple of weeks, I mean, I would start giving the ball to Singletary.
And what was funny about it too, Dylan, is I actually had, before the Scatterbo injury, I had Singletary tabbed as a potential trade candidate for the Giants, because I figured, okay, they got Scatterbo, they got Tracy, why would they need Singletary for? And that kind of goes into the next subject we have here, is the trade deadline. And what I wonder about the trade deadline here is, as far as selling pieces, well, let's start with. I'll get that in a bit. Let's talk about maybe adding pieces. Like we'll start with that. Do you think there's any way the Giants could add here at the trade deadline that they will try to add, or do you think it's pretty much just they're going to go the rest of the season as currently constructed?
I don't think that they're going to be able to add anyone right now. If the current wide receiver market, the only thing that you should really be looking for the Giants at this point. It's pretty dead as of right now. Like there has been no moves whatsoever. Like Jacoby Myers, who has been begging for a trade the entire season, hasn't even been moved yet. So
Yeah.
I'm not really looking to see that. Like, I don't think that's going to be something that they do now. I think if anything, they're just probably going to stay put and be sellers.
You know what? Yeah, I think if there's one wide receiver I think could be a quote unquote realistic addition for them, and maybe Rashid Shaheed from New Orleans because he is in the final year of his deal. And I think the Saints will probably look to try to move him before the deadline, which right now we're recording this on Monday. Deadline is tomorrow on Tuesday. Olave is not getting moved. He's staying put. Looks like Waddle. I thought after the Dolphins part of it was with Chris Greer, the GM, I thought maybe there's a chance Waddle gets moved, but looks like he's staying put as well. Myers just isn't a good fit for the Giants. He's 29 years old. He's in the final year of his deal. I think he's going to get paid way too much money from what the Giants, should be offering him in the offseason free agency. So that's out of the question. Shaheed is an impending free agent, but I think he's a guy who would look really good next to Neighbors next year. And you probably have to trade a day 3 pick for him. So maybe that's something the Giants could look at there as far as a potential addition is concerned.
Yeah, and I agree too. Like he's someone where you're not necessarily looking for like some big time established veteran, You have a Malik Neighbors. You're just waiting for him to come back next year. It's just someone for now to steer the ship with Jackson Dart and making sure that he has everything in place and helping him in his rookie season. So I think Shaheed, especially once you do get Malik Neighbors back, he's a perfect deep threat for you guys too. And it's just, I think that's probably the best case scenario right now for the Giants.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also, in free agency, when he hits free agency, he wouldn't be that expensive to re-sign. And what's interesting too is Wan'Dale Robinson is headed toward free agency as well. So they already re-signed Darius Slayton to that long-term deal. I think it was 3 years last offseason, which I didn't necessarily agree with. But maybe if they sign Shaheed and if that would replace Robinson, if they lose him in free agency, or they could keep Robinson as well, re-sign him, and then you're looking at a receiving corps of Neighbors, Shaheed, Robinson, Slayton's number 4. That's a heck of a receiving corps for Jackson Dart in year 2.
Yeah, no, I mean that would be like the best case scenario too, because you have a lot of freedom with your cap space right now, considering that you have a quarterback on his rookie deal. So go utilize that. Make sure that you are spending the money to be able to support your quarterback. And then on top of that too, your top wide receiver is also on his rookie deal as well. So you got plenty of resources now to be able to go out and make some moves there and, really kind of establish everything moving forward. Because and on Scatabo as well. And, especially like Wan'Dale, like he's been someone too where he works perfectly within Brian Daboll's system. So like if you keep him around, I have no issues with that whatsoever.
And on the other side of it, though, Dylan, as far as selling pieces, this is where I'm going to get to people see the tab here. What does trade deadline conspiracy mean? Well, my thought process here with this whole thing, and I did a piece on this the other day. I don't think Brian Daboll and Joe Sheehan are staying around beyond this season. I think they're going to be gone this year. I think the writing's on the wall. I think that they were close to being gone for last year, but this year now they're 2-7. They lost 3 in a row. The defense doesn't look any better, right? It's been a disaster for the Giants. I think they're gone for this year. So as far as selling off someone like a Kayvon Thibodeau, who we discussed earlier, or even a Devin Singletary, or any of these other pieces the Giants could potentially move by a deadline, I'm looking at it like if I'm Joe Sheehan or Brian Daboll, I'm like, what's the point of trading these guys now for draft capital that I'm not even going to be able to use because I'm not going to be here any longer? So trading Kayvon Thibodeau makes the team, unless you're getting a wide receiver in return, like there is a scenario where they could trade Thibodeau for like a Shaheed, for example, right? Something like that. I'm not saying that's a one-to-one thing, but maybe that could happen. But most likely, if you trade Thibodeau, it's for a draft pick. And if I'm the Giants, like trading Thibodeau makes you worse this year, and it gives you less of a chance of winning games. So if I'm Daboll and Sheen, I want as many wins as possible on my resume, for my for future employment. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to trade these guys for draft picks. I'm not even going to use.
Yeah, I mean, the only rebuttal that I would have is that it could be a lot of different things. One, it could also be like the market just not being where it's at because again, like everyone said, like this was all these guys are going to be being moved away and stuff, and yet there really hasn't been any trades. And like the only edge rusher, I mean, that I can really think of that was like one of the big time names that got moved was, I mean, Jalen Phillips, right?
Yeah.
For Miami there, but I don't know. I just feel like it's maybe not the correct market right now. Or even then, like I'll float out another idea. What if they don't think that Abdul Carter is ready just yet? Like that's also not out of the realm of possibilities because, yeah, I mean he's been doing a good job of getting after the quarterback and stuff, but the sacks haven't been there. So I feel like if you bring in someone or keep around, I should say, a guy like KT, it's probably a little bit beneficial from that standpoint. But that's the only reasons why I think that he would really keep him around in that sense.
It's funny because what you just said is very, very interesting to me because as far as Thibodeau is concerned, his contract is up after next year, right? He can walk after next year. Carter will be eligible for a contract extension after 2027. But you kind of get the feeling that Carter will be showing who he really is at some point next season, right? My thing is with Kayvon Thibodeau, do you then try to work out some kind of team-friendly extension with him this offseason? Because I don't think he would take it. I think Thibodeau on the open market will get a pretty big deal because I think he could be I don't know about an elite edge rusher, but he had 11 and a half sacks 2 years ago. I think he'd be a really good edge rusher somewhere else. Like, for example, San Francisco could use a Kayvon Thibodeau badly. So it's kind of a weird spot they're in, because by the time that they have to make a decision on Carter, Thibodeau could already be gone, right? So it's weird. It's in a weird spot, and that's why, like, when they drafted Carter with the third overall pick, my thought was like, okay, I like Carter. I think he's a great talent, but is this the right move for the team structurally speaking? Looking at it from a perspective, okay, we're not drafting on need here. We're drafting based on best player available. And that's something that kind of bothered me. We discussed this previously in a previous podcast where they could have traded that number 3 pick and traded down and gotten more draft capital to fill out some other needs, like the receiving corps, like the offensive line, their secondary, maybe another defensive tackle. So to me, the idea of keeping Thibodeau around for the year, it's risky too because you might then lose him for nothing in the offseason.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that also it's just one of those cases where it sucks we're not in the building to know kind of really what's going on in that sense. But I don't like the idea of taking or giving an extension to KT at that point, just because I'd rather invest the money somewhere else because, we just talked about how, there's plenty of money to go around and stuff, but at the same time too, you have to keep it to some extent so that, when you have potentially a contract where you got to offer Dart and stuff, you got to have that money available. And I feel like at this point, the writing's on the wall with that. Like it needs to just be done. And if like they can't find something, I get it, but like please at least put an effort for it.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I wanted them to move him at the deadline this year because I think, like, to me, now again, we're not on the phone. We don't know what these other GMs and front office guys are saying, but I would think Thibodeau's value would be higher now than it would be during the offseason because you get him for a year and a half rather than just a year, right? If you're the 49ers or you're a team you mentioned, the Indianapolis Colts, who use in the pass rusher, you can get Thibodeau now for a Super Bowl run and have him there next year as well. And then once the time comes, then you can decide whether or not you want to extend him or sign him back, right? Whereas with the Giants, they're not contending this year, right? They're probably not going to be – they might contend for a playoff spot next year depending on what Neighbors how he looks coming back. But they're not going to pay 3 edge rushers big money long term, right? It's just not financially responsible. So I know some Giants fans are thinking, there's no way you could trade Thibodeau, no way. But you look at it, and they drafted Carter. They kind of painted themselves into a corner here because now you're like, okay, now we kind of have to make a move because even the thing that really stinks, Dylan, is even if Carter doesn't develop properly, right, you're probably going to lose Thibodeau anyway because again, you can't extend Carter until 2027. After 2027.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's going to be your biggest issue there is it's a lot of uncertainties with it. However, I do think though that like one team that you mentioned that I would assume are going to be aggressively pursuing guys is the 49ers at this point. I mean, Michael Williams going down with that injury, season ending, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that they're probably going to be they have to be calling some teams for that.
Yeah,
right?
and even before Williams got hurt, Bosa was out. Williams wasn't even playing that well anyway. So like,
Exactly.
yeah, so
They have nothing now. Yeah.
no, nothing. But we'll see what the Giants do the next 24 hours or so here, the deadline. I think we both agree. I don't think there's gonna be much happening with the Giants. I don't see it. I don't think they make many moves at all, if at all. And the trade deadline now, it's not what it used to be in the NFL. It's definitely more active than it was in prior years, but I don't think the Giants, I think them losing yesterday to San Francisco kind of put the nail in the coffin for them making any moves. And Dan Duggan of The Athletic actually did a piece in this saying that the Giants actually do trade draft capital for a receiver at the deadline here. It would be a very good look for the franchise because they need those picks. And I understand. I do understand that. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
That makes sense.
Now we go into week 10 against the Bears. I guess we have to do this preview, Dylan, even though we know what's probably going to happen. But what I will say is one thing here. The Bears defense has not looked good. So maybe there's a chance Jackson Dart can make some magic on the road here. But I just, based on the fact that the Bears also scored 47 points yesterday, I don't see the Giants winning this game on the road.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like the Bears are at this point of the season where it's really starting to click, because if you're looking at Ben Johnson's play calls just from like last week alone, I mean, he's been off the charts with that. And it's very scary to see like this team coming in and playing, a defense that has really struggled at times this year. And I am a little concerned on that end. I think that Dart will probably have another good game, in my opinion, just because, I mean, that Bears defense has atrocious right now. And I don't know. I'm really worried, though, about the Giants defense at this point.
You know why I'm worried too, Dylan? Because the Giants might be without more guys in the secondary again next week. And the Bears receiving corps, you have DJ Moore, right? You have Rome Odunze. You have even Olamide Zaccheaus has been very good for them, right? He's been solid, right? And you also have Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. It doesn't end. And as far as the Kyle Monangai in the backfield, looked great as well yesterday, replacing DeAndre Swift, who was out. So this Bears, even like last year, it was kind of puzzling to me that their offense wasn't better than it was. Maybe it was Matt Eberflus and the coaches have not doing the right job there. But Ben Johnson seems to have unlocked something here, and it's bad news for a Giants team that just gave up 34 points to Mac Jones.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that to some extent, I'll give the Giants a little bit of credit. I think their defense is better than the Bengals, which is, at least somewhat of a positive. It's not saying much. No, I get that. However, I do think, though, that it's like at least a positive sign knowing that, okay, there's maybe a chance we could stop them. But I don't know. It's just the injuries. I think it's brutal. There's too many weapons. I mean, Rome Odunze didn't even have a catch the last game, and yet they still put up X amount of points.
And what did Kmet have? Did Kmet have one? I think one catch. What did he have?
He had one catch, and I think it was touchdown, right?
Was it a touchdown? Let me see. No, not a touchdown. No, Loveland had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he would. Loveland had an impressive game, and that's one piece, especially too with some of the injuries too. Like Colson Loveland will probably have a game of a game.
That's what's. I mean, Caleb Williams hasn't looked great for most of the year, but when he has looked good, he has looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday against the Bengals was one of those days. Now, again, the Giants defense is a little better than the Bengals, but it's not so good where I'm saying, the Giants are going to win this game handily. They're on the road. I actually think, to be honest with you, Dylan, I thought looking at the schedule, yesterday was one game the Giants could have stolen. If I'm going to tell you they're going to steal one game, I thought it would be at home against San Francisco with them not having Brock Purdy and not having so many other pieces there.
Yeah.
But looking at the rest of the schedule now, real quick, let's look at the rest of the schedule here, Dylan. Let's check this out. Let's look at this real quick. Let's try to find the Giants' next win. Before we close out this podcast, let's find the Giants' next win. All right, they're at Chicago. Then they're home against Green Bay. Then they're at Detroit. Then they're at New England. Then they have a bye. Then they're home against the Commanders, which maybe, depending on what happens with Jaden Daniels here, maybe. Then they're home against the Vikings, at Vegas, whatever, and then home against Dallas in the season. There is not, other than Vegas, there's not one game on that schedule where I can look at and say the Giants should win that game.
The only one that I would say that kind of piques my interest would be Washington. Mainly because Jaden Daniels is hurt and he's out for the season most likely. So that's like the only one. This one might sound a little bit crazy to say because I know they're red hot right now, but New England on a Monday night game, that could potentially be something. I don't want to, put the flag down on that one, but like it could potentially be that. But other than that, no, the schedule is just it's horrendous.
See, I just checked New England schedule to see maybe it's like a thing where they're like a trap game for them. But I'm looking at, they have, just like the Giants, they have a bye after that game, so they're not even gonna be looking ahead to anybody. So I don't know. Maybe they're playing like a really good team the following week. Oh, they'll look past the Giants, but no, they're not gonna. I don't know, Dylan. I think Drake May's gonna pass all over that secondary. I mean,
it's electric.
It's bad. It's so bad right now. Honestly, it's just getting depressing. It really is because
brutal.
Every time, a few weeks ago, it looked like the Giants had a lot to look forward to, and I think they still do going forward. I think Jackson Dart's going to be a very good quarterback in this league. You're getting Malik Neighbors back next year. Scatterby comes back. I think the defense, we've heard this before, I think it will be better next season. I think with Carter having a year under his belt of experience and maybe the Giants make some moves in the draft and maybe in a free agency move. I don't know. We'll see. But the rest of the season is going to be very, very, very tough. And I'm not sure the Giants have 2 wins right now. I'm not sure they even get to 4 wins. Maybe they get – I think they top out at 4-13.
Yeah. I think it's either 4 or 5 wins max.
Do you think they can get 5?
I think that there's a 99.9% chance that they'll probably go for 4.
Okay.
But a 0.1% chance. Yeah. It's maybe. That's, again, everything would have to fall into place for that.
I mean, Green Bay's been the team that teams have been stealing games against this year, right? Cleveland still won. Carolina still won yesterday. So maybe the Giants still won. I don't think so. I just don't see it.
That's wishful thinking.
Yeah, it is. But all right, everybody, that's the rest of this episode of the Giants podcast. Not much else to say here. It has been a very good stretch of games for the Giants. Maybe there'll be some fireworks at the trade deadline within the next 24 hours, but I doubt that as well. We'll see. But, it will be interesting to track the progress of Jackson Dart going forward the rest of the season. He's the one, the one hope for the Giants moving forward here. And I do think the Giants will be in ultimately good hands for the future. Regardless of what happens the rest of the way here, I think the Giants will be okay. But for Dylan Feltovich, I'm Matthew Schmidt. This is the Giants Roundtable Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.